Hello, my name is Sarah Ann Daly. Today I'll be discussing decimal multiplication. I would like to illustrate how it can be a fairly simple process through 3 sample problems. In our first problem, we meet Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan owns a flour store. He has several bags of flour which are only partly full, so he decides to sell them at a discounted rate to get rid of them quickly. If he sells 5 bags of flour, which are 0.36 of the way full each, how much flour did he sell total? Let's first look at an illustration of this problem. As you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags of flour. This is because our story problem told us that there are 5 groups. Each bag is 0.36 of the way full. This is because our story problem told us that each of these 5 groups was 0.36. In order to find how much flour Mr. Duncan sold total, we just need to add these 5 bags together. Okay, let's start by adding these 2 bags together. If we pour this bag into this one and add 0.36 plus 0.36, we end up with a bag that is 0.72 of the way full. Now, let's add one more. We'll pour this bag into this one now. And it looks like it won't all fit. We have a little left over. So if we add 0.36 to our 0.72, we get one whole with 0.08 or 800ths left over. Now we will just add these 2 last bags to this bag. If we add 0.36 to 0.08 twice, we get a bag that is 0.8 of the way full. So total we have 1.8 bags of flour sold after we find how much 5 groups of 0.036 is. So here we have 1.80, but you can take the 0 off the end because it's to the right of a decimal point. Now, another way that we can show this problem is by using base 10 blocks. This block represents one whole. As you can see on this block, I marked off 0.36. Now in our story problem, we learned that there were 5 groups of 0.36. So here are 5 groups with 0.36 in each of them. Let's add them together to find the answer. First, just like in our illustration, we'll add 2 of the groups together. So we took all the dots that were filled in on this block and put them onto this one. So 0.36 plus 0.36 equals 0.72. Now we'll add one more. And as you can see, when we added one more, it went a little over 1. So when we added the next group of 0.36, we get 1 whole and 0.8. Now we'll add these last 2 groups of 0.36. This brings us to our grand total of 1 whole, and then this one has 80 little dots filled in, so that is 0.8, so 1 whole and 0.8, or 1.8. There were 1.8 bags of flour sold. We can also write out this problem, or the story problem, in a number sentence. So to write out 5 groups of 0.36 each, we end up with 5 times 0.36 equals 1.8. In our next problem, Mr. Duncan is at it again. Mr. Duncan had 5 full bags of flour to sell. This time he only sold 0.25 of them. How many bags total did he sell? Let's use an illustration to find out. In this illustration, we once again have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags of flour. This time, you can see by this line up here that they are all completely full. Mr. Duncan only sold 0.25 of the bags of flour. 0.25 is the same as 1/4, so we can divide the bags of flour into fourths. Now, we can look straight across these horizontal lines as our whole. We are looking for 0.25 groups of 5. If Mr. Duncan sold 0.25 or 1/4 of the whole, we know that he would have sold this shaded part down here. So we can add these different bags with only 0.25 of each of them together. Let's put these two together to start with. That will equal 0.50. Now if we add two more, we will get to one whole with just 0.25 left over. So we can see that 0.25 groups of 5 is 1.25. Our number sentence for 0.25 groups of 5 would be 0.25 times 5 equals 1.25. Finally, in our last story problem, Mr. Duncan has made things a little more complicated. Remember his bags which were partly full and sold for a discount? He's doing the same thing again. This time, he has some customers who only need a little bit of flour though. Mr. Duncan has a bag of flour that is 0.36 of the way full. There was a customer who only wanted to buy 0.25 of a partly full bag. How much flour would they end up buying total? Let's use base 10 blocks for this problem. First, as you remember, this block is our whole, or 1. Now, I've marked off 0.36 to represent how full our bag is initially. Each of these smaller blocks represents 0.01. Here's the same number of smaller blocks that we marked off in this big square to show 0.36. Now Mr. Duncan's customer would like to purchase 0.25 groups of this 0.36 of a bag of flour. So we already remembered together earlier that 0.25 is the same thing as 1/4. So let's divide this 0.36 into fourths. Now we just want 0.25, or one of these fourths. So we can put dots on just one section of these fourths. Now we can count out just how many squares 0.25 groups of 0.36 is. Looks like it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 squares. Let's look at that on our block that represents a whole. So remember, this is divided into 0.36. That's what everything on this side of the line represents. And now since we found out that each section has 9 blocks in it, then we marked off 9 blocks for all these sections. And so since each square represents 0.01, and we know that we need 9 of them to find our 0.25 groups of 0.36, we can shade those in, and as I said earlier, each square represents 0.01, and so we have 0.09. So we know that the customer who bought 0.25 groups of 0.36 of a bag of flour bought 0.09 bags of flour, just enough to make some delicious cookies. If we were to write a number sentence to represent 0.25 groups of 0.36, it would look like this. 0.25 times 0.36 equals 0.09. And there you have it, decimal multiplication at its finest.